Yeah.
Welcome everybody to this meeting of the Western Area Planning Committee. It's slightly after 3 o'clock, so we'll make a start. The first thing on the agenda is the apologies, and I'll hand over to the Democratic Services Officer.
Thank you, Chair. So we've had apologies from Councillor David Vigar, and we've got Councillor Gordon King substituting for him today. And we've also had apologies from Councillor Edward Kirk.
Thank you very much to Councillor King for stepping into the breach, and I see you there. Welcome. Minutes of the previous meeting, they have been circulated. Does anyone have any corrections or additions to those minutes? I'm not seeing anyone indicate, so I will move that we approve them. Someone to second? Thank you very much, Councillor Bill Parks. All in favour, please show. That's unanimous. Okay, so they are approved. Declarations of interest. This is only for members of Wiltshire Council, nobody else. So do any members of the council have, and I see Councillor Seed.
Yeah, I hadn't realised this until I walked past an agent downstairs. I have been involved in working with him on behalf of a parish council some years ago, but it's not a pecuniary interest.
Is that the planning application on today's agenda?
Yes.
Seed. Okay, so it's a
I approached
non-pecuniary
him with
interest.
an open mind, but I just happened to know him because he did some work for Bromham Parish Council over the Travellers site, which was then taken on by Wiltshire Council.
Okay, well, we can minute that you know the applicant's agent, is that it? But that this is a non-pecuniary interest. Is that getting it right? Okay, thank you. Any other? Oh, Councillor Ernie Clark.
Thanks, Chairman. Just to declare that for the one planning item that's on here, I actually know the applicant and drink with him on a regular basis. And the monitoring officer has advised that my best course of action will be to speak to the member of the public. So when we get to that part, I'll take me 3 minutes up the back if that's okay. But we will not take part as a unitary member at all.
Okay, well, we can minute that you know the applicant and you will take part as a member of the public and you will not speak or vote on the item. Is that what you would like us to minute?
That is, if you want to put in there, so I have consulted the monitoring officer to ensure that I don't get myself or the council into hot water.
Okay, so we will add that this is on the advice of the monitoring officer. Okay, right. Does anybody else? Councillor Seed again.
Sorry, this is just maybe a pedantic point. Well, it is a pedantic point, but how can Councillor Clark, and it's not a point against you, how can he exercise his right of calling and have such an interest that he can't take part as a member of the committee and has to sit as a member of the public?
I have a feeling that would be a question for the monitoring officer rather than Councillor Clark. He's clearly acting on the monitoring officer's advice. Do you want to say anything, Councillor Clark?
If I may, Chairman, I totally agree with you. And in fact, I wondered how it was. But I've called this in, if you look at the call in, it was simply because the parish council requested me to. And as I know the applicant, but I'm not supporting the applicant, I thought I'd be okay. But then when our sort of declaration things were all changed, I thought I'd better have a word with Perry, so with the monitoring officer, and he said to be safe, it would be better if I didn't. But I did say to him, should I withdraw the call in? But then my fear was if I did that, anybody would say, oh, he's only withdrawn the call in because he knows the applicant, and I'd be sort of making the situation even worse. So I apologise for...
I think that makes sense. What you're saying is somebody has to have the right to call in, but also the point you just made actually satisfied that the parish council had asked you to call it in.
Yeah. Thank you, Councillor Seed. I think we're doing our best in difficult circumstances, really. Does anyone else have anything to say under declarations of interest? I'm not seeing any hands. Oh, I beg your pardon. Oh, that wasn't you indicating, Councillor Wickham. You were just sort of, yeah, okay, I'll say no more. Okay, let's move on then. The next is Chairman's announcements. and just the usual ones. Could I please ask everyone who has a mobile phone to turn it to silent or off, just so that it doesn't interrupt us when somebody is speaking? We have not been told about any fire drills, so if the fire alarm goes off, everyone, I will immediately ask the DSO on my left to lead us safely out of the building. And that is, I think, about it. Are there any other announcements to be made? No. Okay. Public participation. Do we have any questions?
None that I'm aware of,
No.
Chair.
Okay. So the rules are that people who have signed in to speak, and you know who you are, let me have a look at the list. We have 2 people signed in to speak, Ernie Clark, who is going to speak as a member of the public, and Ben Pierce, who is going to speak as the applicant's agent, just those 2. So they will each have 3 minutes or up to 3 minutes, and we try to be reasonably sort of fair about sticking to the 3 minutes. If today, as there's only one item, if somebody runs over, I will give extra time to the other, but I will not let people go on more than 4 minutes. How's that? The questions we don't have. So the main thing is that the way we work is that we have an officer who is, the seat is empty at the moment, but it will soon be full, I'm sure. We have an officer who will present an officer's recommendation on each item, and there is only one. We then have questions from the members of the committee to the officer. We deal with those. We have public participation, which in this case is 2 people who've signed to speak. We normally then hear from the local member, but the local member is one of the members of the public. And we then go into debate, and we do ask everybody not to interrupt our debate. We have to keep that separate from the public bit. Let us then move on to the next item on the agenda, which is the planning appeals and updates, pages 19 to 46. And we have Kenny Green, who is here for this item. Kenny.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. So on the page for the determined appeals, there are 6, 2 of which relate to enforcement cases, and for the Eagle Died, 2 were varied and upheld. So 12 and 14 Budbury Place, there were applications to alter and do various works to which we didn't consider to be acceptable. It ended up at enforcement case, went to appeal, and as you can see, the inspector varied various aspects of those 2 appeals. I'm here if there's any particular questions on those 2 appeals, but I wanted to concentrate, Chair, on a couple of good results which we had for Monkton Combe, which was a greenbelt site where we had various concerns about alterations, the construction of a garage, highway concerns, which ultimately led to a refusal, which went to appeal, and it was successfully defended. The next one, or the next 2 rather, one at Forest Road, Melksham, and another one at Summerdown Walk in Trowbridge, for single dwelling houses within plots that we considered to be constrained to such an extent that the developers in both cases couldn't get an appropriate level of amenity and high quality development. So we refused both applications, both went to appeal, and as you can see, both were dismissed. So those were good results. The one disappointing one was the case at Bradford Navan at 3C Kingsfield Grange Road. Now, for those that have read the appeal decision, there is a reference to a fairly recent appeal that was dismissed. So here we've got an example where one inspector has actually disagreed with a previous inspector, thinking, well, I don't agree with it, so there should be no real reason why we shouldn't allow this development. So there were changes between the first refusal and the second refusal, but we certainly didn't agree that it constituted high quality development or policy compliant development. And we did refer, obviously, to the previous appeal decision, which backed up our position. But unfortunately, Chair and councillors, we had one inspector on this occasion that disagreed with everyone, by the looks of it, including the Bradford and Avon Preservation Trust. So some disappointing news this time to report, Chair, that we had one appeal decision overturned at appeal.
Thank you, Kenny. Well, that's very disappointing, but there you are. Any comments from anybody? Any questions to the officer? In that case, I'll move that we note the report. Someone to second. Thank you, Councillor Clark. All in favour, please indicate. Any against? That is noted. That then takes us on to the Warden Lane one, and Gemma Foster, who is the case officer, has just joined me on my right. I will hand over to her to take us through her report. Gemma.
Good afternoon. This application is for a change of use of land to a dog exercise field. It also includes an improved access to a parking area, and the opening times are 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. every day. The applicant has advised that clients will book 1 hour slots with no more than 1 car per booking. Clients will be private individuals and not be used for commercial purposes, and there'll be a 15-minute crossover period to ensure parking is clear for the next client. So I just wanted to show the site layout. We've got a right-of-way up here, Hilperton 18. We've got another one here, Hilperton 23. Got another one down here, Hilperton 22. And one across here, Hilperton 20. This one here is Hilperton 21. This is a byway which has been recently resurfaced. And this is where the parish council have got major concerns with, although concerns with increase in vehicular traffic on Warden Lane, they're also concerned about an increase in vehicular traffic along this byway. So this is the proposed site plan. The existing site is used for the grazing and keeping of horses. The parish council were also concerned about the loss of agricultural land. However, there's no development other than the car parking area, so it could be easily returned to agricultural use, and there is a condition requesting this. There's a more detailed plan of the parking and layout. During the application, we did ask for the parking area to be enlarged so that cars can enter and leave the site in a forward gear. There is an existing access here, although having been on site, doesn't look like it's used very much, but there is one there. So this is where the access is off here. So there's an existing lay-by. So we've got the site on the left here with the access, and on the other side of the site is Maylands Farm, which is, there's a dwelling there, an agricultural workers dwelling. And this is an application of within the site, so you can see the existing vegetation. This will be increased with the fencing to make the site secure. And this is from the access looking towards Hilperton. And just along here, you can see an existing fence line, which is where the proposed hedge is going to be. This one is a bit more close up. So this will, the hedge will provide limited visibility between the existing horse field and the proposed dog area. As already said, the parish council have been concerned about access and increase in vehicular traffic on Warden Lane. The black dots here indicate all the passing bays between Hilperton and the site, which is outlined in red. And the following photos show what they look like in turn. I've been along this lane quite a few times, and I have come across horses, dog walkers, cyclists, but there doesn't seem to be a problem with people passing. And certainly highways have supported the application because there is only a maximum addition of 11 cars a day due to the booking system, which is considered not to be a severe residual cumulative impact upon the existing highway. That concludes the presentation. The application is recommended for approval as per the conditions in your agenda.
Thank you. Questions to Gemma Foster on the report? Councillor Wickham.
Thank you. If approved, could I ask who would be responsible for emptying the dog bin?
Yes, the applicant will be responsible for that. They have actually advised that they will provide dog waste bags and that a specialist contract company will be instructed to arrange the collection and disposal of waste.
Thank you.
Other questions? I don't see anyone asking anything. I'm just wondering whether I can allow Ernie to ask a question. He's not shaking his head that he doesn't want to anyway, so that saves me from the conundrum. Okay, well, in that case, that takes us on to the public forum. And we have a regular batting order, which is that we take objectors first and supporters or agents second. And Ernie Clark has signed in as an objector, so you go first. Over to you, Mr. Clark.
Thank you, Chairman. As a member of Hilton Parish Council, could I firstly apologise to the committee that yet again nobody from the parish council has come along to speak to an item that they've objected to, and I will. And as a Wiltshire councillor, Chairman, I will be telling them that in future I'm not going to call stuff in just because they object to it, because this is the third or fourth time it's happened, and I find it embarrassing, and I'm sure the committee members don't like it either. So again, I apologise. There's nobody here from the parish council. As far as the sort of public speech part of it goes, Chairman, if I could just refer members to section 9.4 in the report. And the problem is the MPPF, as it says, that development should only be prevented or refused on highway grounds if there would be an unacceptable impact on highway safety. But there's no definition of what unacceptable is. As the case officer said to you, she's been down there several times, and I was a little surprised to hear that she's not sort of come across any tractors or anything else coming the other way, because it is only a single track road with a 60-mile-an-hour speed limit on it, and a lot of people do go along there rather quickly. I would also point out that the report mentions policies 60 and 61 of the core strategy, which are to reduce the need for travel, particularly by private car, and support and encourage sustainable, safe and efficient movement of people. And the report then does go on to say that the majority of the travel, I would say that everybody that goes there is going to be driving. So it's definitely against policies 60 and 61 of the core strategy. But having said that, there's obviously the fact that we can't prove there'll be an unacceptable impact, because until somebody gets killed along that road, nobody's going to sort of take any notice of the parish council or local members. It's a shame that Councillor Kirk's not here because he lives in the division and he would probably be able to give some information on that. Again, in the report, it says, from experience, the lane is known to be used by pedestrians, cyclists and horse riders as part of their route to access the local bridleway, footpath network and canal towpath. Again, I can fully endorse that, but again, it will come down to the weight that the committee puts on the fact that there'll be 22 traffic, well, up to 22 traffic movements extra, which in a day, I admit, doesn't sound an awful lot. But when a lane's little used by vehicles, but heavily used by pedestrians and cyclists, it could have a material sort of effect on it. But again, obviously, that is something that the members of the committee will need to consider. To sum up very briefly, Chairman, if I could say that if the committee is agreeable, agrees to permit this, I'm happy to see the conditions 4, 5, 9 and 10. And ironically, as Councillor Wickham, I was going to point out that there was no mention of it actually emptying the dog bin, apart from the fact it's got to be there. But as I say, Councillor Wickham mentioned that earlier, and I think that's been addressed now. So I'll leave it at that, Chairman, that the conditions, if it's permitted, I'd see absolutely no problem with. And it's going to be up to the committee whether they think these extra traffic movements will meet the requirement of being an unacceptable impact, or if such few numbers wouldn't. And I think with that, Chairman, I'll call it a day. And if you could give me a few moments, although I'm entitled to stay, I think for safety's sake, I'll actually leave the meeting, if that's okay.
Okay, right. Well, we've got a minute, I think, that you left the meeting. Let's then go to Mr. Ben Pearce, who is the applicant's agent, and you also have up to 3 minutes, Mr. Pearce.
Thank you, Chair. We welcome the careful consideration that your officer has given to this application for the recreational use of a smaller area of grazing on Wadden Lane. Not all members of the public like or wish to engage with dogs in our public spaces. Parks, back gardens, or public rights of way cannot provide opportunities for free play and the natural behaviours that specific dog exercise fields can offer. The proposed use of the field for dog exercising reflects a growing need and market for controlled locations where dogs can play and exercise safely, creating a stress-free environment in the countryside for both pet and owner to enjoy. In consultation with the highways officers, appropriate parking has been provided on the site, and by staggering bookings, the potential for highway impacts will be minimised to preserve the character and safety of Wadden Lane for residents and recreational users of the highway. The applicant, who lives in close proximity to the site, is entirely agreeable to the conditions suggested by your officer and will ensure that the facility is managed in accordance with those conditions. For these reasons, we respectfully urge members of the committee to support the recommendation and grant planning permission for this proposal. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. My goodness. I think Ernie has gone, but I think I better just mention that Gemma didn't say she saw no cars. She said she saw no cars parked. I think that's what you said, isn't it, Gemma?
No cars parked, but also no issues with passing cars, tractors, people with dogs. I think the pedestrians who do use that route are fully aware that it's for vehicle traffic.
Yeah, well, it's obviously, I'm familiar with it. It's obviously a single track road with no through. It's a dead end. It doesn't go anywhere for cars. It has cyclists who can go through, it has walkers who can go through. I believe riders can go through, but the cars are only able to get, Councillor Seed's going to tell us something in a minute. And when I've used it, I've often met cyclists and walkers, occasionally riders, very rarely other cars. But of course, because there are only, 15 houses and a few businesses up there, the number of vehicle movements in a day is very slight. And I assume that it would be sort of when they go off to work and when they come home from work in the evening. It's going to be rush hour traffic, and the rest of the day, very little. Would that be about right, Gemma?
Yes, only one, I think it's not a dead end at the end. It does continue up around the corner.
I don't think it's a... possibly Trevor will be able to fill us in, but I'm not aware.
It
that
is
you
a
can drive
no-through
through.
road, Chair. It just goes to Wadden. There's a Packhorse Bridge where you can walk over to Melksham if you wanted to.
But you
I'm not
can't
sure
drive
whether you can
across the
cycle it or
Packhorse
not. I've
Bridge,
never
can
tried,
you?
but you can't get through in a car. So it's a dead end, it's no through road.
It is a dead end, yeah. I suppose if you're on a motorcycle, you might just about get through. You could get over the Packhorse Bridge. Right, and then Councillor Seed had something?
I came in at the wrong point. I thought you'd asked for, I thought you'd open the debate up.
Was there anything that Mr. Pearce said that you wanted to comment on? No? Okay, Gemma. Well, in that case, there we are. It's here to be debated. Would somebody like to move something? Councillor Seed, I see your hand.
Yes, Chair. I've looked at this. I know Wadden Lane. It's not a bad, quiet little lane, as pointed out by the officer. Plenty of passing places. I note in the report that the field has previously been used for grazing horses. Actually, if somebody kept maybe, I don't know, 4 or 5 ponies in there and they were different ownership, you could probably have the same number of cars going up and down the lane to service the, morning and evening to check the ponies. So without the parking places. So I think this is a diversification, looks perfectly reasonable for a farm business. I can't see any evidence of the objection that has been raised by the parish council, and on the contrary, the only evidence that we can actually quantify is the booking system and the number of cars that would be parked there. Therefore, and on that basis, the one thing I am going to mention is that wretched byway, which eventually goes all the way to Semmington and is grossly oversurfaced, and is almost a highway. And if people started using that as a means of access, perhaps from Semmington to this, then it would be of concern. But having just raised a hobby horse, I think I'll get back onto the mainstream and just say, actually, propose that I would move the officer's recommendation and look for a seconder.
Thank you, Councillor Cedar. I think Councillor Wickham is seconding it. Yeah. Okay. Well, clearly a byway is a highway, and if it's not restricted, anything can drive along it, including an HGV, and people often. Anyway, let's concentrate on. We've got this moved and seconded for permission. Does anyone wish to say anything else before we go to the vote? You don't need to sum up, Councillor Z, because you've just spoken.
No, thank you.
Okay, I will just say, in sympathy to Ernie, I've had one of these to deal with. There was one in Upton Lovell, and it did cause quite a lot of. I see Councillor Davis nodding. It did cause quite a lot of interest and concern, but that was because there were a lot of houses around the field, and in fact, after the permission was given, there was one particular house where somebody was working all day and trying to concentrate on work, and he found the yapping of dogs was a serious problem for him. But I don't see that problem here. I think, there are some fields where dog walking can develop into quite a big problem for a small number of nearby residents. But I think in this case, A, that isn't the case, and B, it seems to be conditioned in a very sensible way to limit the usage. So I'm in support of this. If we have no other speakers, I will go to the vote. All in favour, please show. That appears to be unanimous. There is nothing urgent, and I will sign the minutes and we can all slip away. We don't know whether there will be a meeting for the just before Christmas. We don't yet have the outcome on whether there are any available. We will keep you posted, but if not, I wish you all a Merry Christmas.